Hey, on this week's episode of the 90 Degrees podcast, we talk about being 12 years old and going to illegal poker games, what it's like to finish in the top 10 of the main event, and getting raided by the SWAT team. That and more on today's episode of the 90 Degrees podcast. Welcome back to the 90 Degrees podcast, where we give an inside look into the sports betting industry. I'm your host, G-Stack George, and I'm excited because today I've got Demo Kiriopolous, professional poker player, one of the best players that I've ever sat at a table with, joining me. Demo, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about your introduction to poker. What drew you to it?
What drew me to it? So I would have to go back to 2003 when I don't know if you guys remember, there was a hockey strike. So that year was a year where the poker boom essentially happened. You know, the moneymaker won the World Series. It was on ESPN. And so I was around 12, I think. 12, yeah, I was 12 years old. And obviously that's when I would say my introduction to poker happened. Just playing some poke. Yeah.
12 years old. When do you start playing poker for money then? Like, is it very soon after?
Very soon after, yeah, in our neighborhoods where we live back home, there's a lot of cafeteria, which is like underground gambling spots, so call it. And yeah, I had older influences, you can say, that brought me to these places as a child.
So for those that don't know, there's a lot of we're from Toronto originally, a place where Daniel Negreanu famously is from, and there's a lot of underground like coffee shops where they serve you coffee in the front, and in the back it's nonstop poker games, and you've got guys who are putting up their whole Friday paycheck and gambling away the kids' university money, and Demo's 12 and 13-year-old kid, and he is playing against guys twice and three and four times his age, and he's taking their money. And it was hilarious because Demo the kid walks in. He's this brilliant poker player. Did you learn a lot of valuable lessons about maybe the bad side of poker going to these shops?
Well, I have to correct you. I wasn't making money at that age. When I was 12, 13, all the way up until 16, I was losing money. I just always had money in my pocket as a kid because I had four older brothers. I had Greek family, the youngest. I just always had three, four, $500 in my pocket, and I would go lose it. So yeah, I didn't start making money until later, like 16, I would say. I started making money.
So how did you figure it out? What? Because a lot of people will play poker their whole lives and never figure it out. What started to click in your head?
I truly believe I just had a natural. I'm naturally talented for the game. I feel like in games of strategy, I was always good. Like I was always in the chess club. I was always just good at every card game. You know, president, anything to do with cards, and I was always a top student in math. So yeah, I just felt like for me, poker just came naturally. And then yeah, I also really loved the game. Uh, and yeah, things just started clicking, started making my paychecks, and I was like, yeah, could do this
Just
professionally.
Did you read any poker books? I know there's two books that I loved reading. One was, I think his name is Dan Henderson, like an old poker good tournament player, would always go deep. And the other one I really liked was Gus Hansen wrote a book where, and it's never been done before, where he detailed every single hand he was in. He was recording himself at the table, and he'd walk off and give information, and it was real cool insight. He ended up winning that tournament, so it was cool insight of how somebody thinks throughout a poker tournament. Did you read any books to improve your play? Were you doing any studying, or was it just hours on the tables?
Yeah, it was just hours on the tables for me. So I got to a point I was playing like I was skipping school. I was playing like till 6, 7. There was times I was playing till 8 in the morning and going straight to school. Like when I was 6. Yeah, it was just hours and hours of of putting the work in. I never read any books. I never did any studying. I kind of just adapted my own game and progressed myself. And I feel like that's also like unique and it has helped me in my own way, for sure.
Do you remember your first good payday where you walked out of a poker room and you're like, man, I made some good coin today. This is gonna be really, really lucrative long term.
Yeah, for sure. There was a time, I think I was like maybe like I'd say 16, and I went to like a bigger cash game, you can say, and I think I made like 10,000, and that was like a big like whoa, like that was a lot of money for me. Like
Sure.
I just like instantly like tripled my bankroll or doubled my bankroll or something, and I thought I was rich. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Have you ever been confronted by someone pissed off that they lost a hand to you?
Oh, all the time. It still happens now. Yeah, people take this game personally. Uh, yeah. So it's happened many times, and it still happens for sure.
We've all like heard a horror story about illegal poker rooms. I remember hearing a story of like one that got robbed. I've seen some stuff. Like, do you have any stories of something outrageous that you saw in a poker room like that stands out to you when you think this is one of the two or three craziest things I've ever seen?
Uh, that I've experienced personally in an underground. I was once uh at a tournament in like it was like in Woodbridge or something. It was far. I was underage, and the game got raided by SWAT team.
Oh
So we're
wow.
we're sitting there. It was like I don't know, 100 people. All of a sudden, we hear the fucking bang, 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 bang. You know, a whole SWAT team comes in with smoke bombs and bang, bang. Everyone got like a ticket, whatever. It was obviously pretty like all of a sudden, like guys are in our faces with guns, and here I am, like 15, 16, I don't know, I forget, and they're just like, "Can you call someone to come pick you up?"
No, no.
Everyone got like a ticket. I had to call my brother to come pick me up. I didn't, and nothing happened to me, right? So that
What
was
was
a.
the ticket? Like, do you remember how much it was?
I think it was like for the players, it was like a $200-300 ticket or something. Uh, they were just after like the people running the game, right, or whatever. Yeah,
Were you
but
doing well in that tournament? Were you pissed off that the tournament got
I
called when it did?
yeah, I was pissed off. I think actually I had some chips, and yeah, for me, like back then, playing a tournament was like I was looking forward to that because I could never play in tournaments. I was underage. I was like so a tournament was like, yo, it's today's a tournament. Like it was yeah, for sure. I was definitely pissed.
Do you remember when you started grinding on a weekly basis where you're like, all right, this is it. This is gonna be my paycheck every week. What age are you now when you're like, I got a schedule, and I'm gonna grind every week?
So like I said, when I was like probably 16, I started making money. I'd say 17, 18. I I started pretty much having a schedule. I had like my certain games I would go to consistently. Uh, yeah, I say 18. After high school, I basically took off. I went to Barcelona, and then I started following like yeah, I'd say 18, 19. I regularly was had a routine of cash games and everything. So,
Do
yeah.
you remember your first big tournament win? How old were you and where was it?
Yeah, I was 20 years old. It was in Dominican, Punta Cana, 2011. So yeah, it was November of 2011. I went there a couple weeks ago for vacation with a couple buddies, and then I saw that they had like a tournament in a couple weeks. So I flew back to Toronto, uh, took a week and a half there, flew back to Dominican, and yeah, I ended up winning that tournament, which was won it for like 140K US, which was, all the money in the world for me back then. Thought I was retired. That money didn't last that long, but it was a good, definitely a good experience for me, and yeah, obviously probably the best win of my life. Like it felt like at that age, winning that kind of money was just like. surreal feeling for sure.
Hey, just taking a quick break. I want to talk about Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sports book and available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. Must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. Not available in the US. Now back to the show. Was it part of
Yeah.
it you've arrived? Because it's one thing to like beat up on your local electrician who's gambling money that he shouldn't be gambling. It's a whole nother thing to go and test yourself against probably some pros in that tournament. Was that the first moment you're like, you know what, I've arrived on the scene?
Uh, sure. Yeah, you can say that for sure. It gave me a definitely a self-confidence boost. When I was 18 years old, though, uh, I just turned 18. I actually flew to Barcelona for an EPT to play 8,300 euro buy-in at the time, which was the main event when the euro was like 1.7 or something. So it was like 13,500 Canadian to buy in. And I thought I was the best player in the world. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go win this tournament. And I went there with like basically like my whole bankroll almost. Like and I just bought in and yeah, I busted day two, so I didn't cash and yeah, that was but like that was like a shot taken, but I felt like that was just like when you have that in you, like you're able to do that, that you need that kind of in poker to succeed. That shot taking, you can't that risk.
They call it leveling up, right? If you don't want to grind at the same stakes forever, you have to eventually take the step up into the table, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember watching the Daniel Negreanu doc, and he talks about how he's doing well in Toronto. He's a well known rounder, and then he's flies over to Vegas and gets cleaned out and come back. And it took a while of going back and forth before he figured out what he was doing because he was trying to step up
Yeah,
the stakes and try to level up.
he would go back home, grind up the bankroll, come back here, get rinsed, go back, and then yeah, exactly. Eventually, you pass that hurdle, right? But it's not easy. Like you have to keep swinging the bat.
All right. You also had some success in Canada, right? In Toronto and Montreal, playing some World Poker Tour. Did you win a tournament in Toronto for the World Poker Tour?
Yeah, the WPT, the 5K, the main, 2019. So that was what now? It's been 4 years.
What was the payday on that?
520 Canadian.
So
Yeah.
at this point, this is your big one, and now what's going through your head when you win this one?
What's going through my head this one? Well, this one was uh definitely special, you know. It was at home. It was a I had a lot of good chances. That was throughout my career to win a lot of tournaments and I felt like I punted a lot of tournaments. So this one to finally sit right and get like a major victory was definitely like was big for me. Obviously the the bankroll, the money was nice. You know, it helps with the bankroll for me to play higher stakes cash games, which is what I've been doing my whole life, and
Sure.
it just makes you get to play other big tournaments, and it's like a parlay of leveling up.
Now, I often hear about people who sell their action to backers, often for a markup. Are you a guy who sells your action, or do you own 100% of yourself in every tournament?
I own 100% of myself in every tournament. I've never sold action. I People always ask me. There's sometimes I'll sell to friends here and there, you know, just for the sweat. But I've never sold any action to any backers. Yeah, I'm kind of that person. I like to do it on my own. I like to not wake up and do my own thing. I don't have to talk to nobody. I don't have to, you know, let anyone know my bad beat story or anything. Just
I know this because I've asked you before to buy some of your action, and you always said you're good, and that was back in the day. And obviously, you're much more successful now. I want to talk about. I used to watch the movie Rounders before every tournament. I don't know, it's a weird superstition just to get in poker mentality. Do you have any poker movies that you love to watch?
The one, well, you just said the one movie, it's pretty much the best poker movie, the only poker movie. Rounders for sure is the one movie I will watch once every couple of years. The only other movie that comes to mind for me is the Stu Unger High Roller movie,
Oh
which
yeah,
uh
Michael Imperioli. That's a fantastic movie.
yeah, that's because for me he's probably the greatest card player ever. Uh, in terms of like skill and his time of when he was doing what he was doing. But yeah, those two movies are the only two movies I'll ever watch. Yeah, any other poker movie is just kind of like too corny or you know.
All right, and for those who don't know, Stu Unger is widely seen as the most talented player to ever play poker. I believe he won the main event 3 times, but he was also a fantastic gin player. There was talks that he had to lay a handicap down on a matchup for anyone to ever bet him money. Like he would let you see the bottom card of the deck, and he wouldn't be privy to that information in order for you to agree to play gin with him because he was that brilliant of a card player. You're in Vegas. I can see in your background. You're not in a studio. You're enjoying it right now because you're playing in the main event, and you were participating in a bunch of events in the World Series of Poker. When do you decide? All right, I think I can go to Vegas. I can hang with these guys. What year do you remember your first year going to Vegas and trying to make a run at it?
As soon as I was 21, as soon as I was able to come here, and I was actually coming here underage. I used to come here when I was 18, 19 with my brother's ID, dabble in the cash games. I actually won a tournament at Caesar's Palace with my brother's ID. And yeah, like a small one, like was maybe like I won like 4K. But yeah, I used to come here when I was underage. I used to go to Atlantic City underage. But when I turned 21, I came here right away. Had a roommate, stayed at the Palms place, and I was in there. I was playing as many events as I can. I had a bankroll from the from the Dominican win. So yeah, as soon as I turned 21, I was here.
So, what does it look like when you get there for World Series of Poker? Are you booking Airbnb suites now? Are you still doing the hotel room? And how long do you plan on staying out there? Is it like you're like, all right, I got a month or two while I'm out here?
Every year is different for me. It's based on how I'm feeling. This year I came here I came here a little late, a couple weeks ago, so I came like June 20th because the series is a long grind, right? And I also play a lot of poker throughout the year. Uh, yeah, so this year I decided to rent a house here it's in Summerlin, which is like 20 minutes off strip. I just feel like I don't like waking up in a casino every day and it's like a zoo there. So if I ever need a room, I just book a room. But I like this vibe more. I get to be more of a human, take a day off, have a barbecue, chill by the pool.
Sure. You said you play poker throughout the year. Do you ever get burnt out from poker? Do you ever get fatigued and say, I need a break? And if so, what's the longest you've gone without playing poker?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like I balance it too much on the other side, or I'm not. I kind of enjoy life a little too much. I feel I think I've gone easily 3 months without playing it, without even touching a card, yeah, or anything. Yeah.
Is there
Go to
rust when you first get back to the tables? Are you bad the first few sessions?
yeah, there's Rusty, but I say it takes maybe about 2, 3 orbits and I'm back. So it just comes back, yeah.
I'm gonna tell a story, Demo, on when I knew you were really good. Okay, we're at a poker spot, and you come in and sit at a table, and it's a cash game, and it's maybe 5 or 6 hands in, and you end up calling off a guy with like bottom pair. It might have even been like full barrel, 3 barrels for all the chips, and you called him down, and you were right. And I said to myself, man, like when I saw your level of poker, I go, oh man, I'm never gonna ever be that good. I don't have that in me. And I said, this kid is special. And anybody I ever talked to about you after, I always said, Dimo's the best player I've ever sat with at a table. Here's a number I'm gonna throw at you, okay? 2.5 million in career earnings, cash and tournament, and you're 47th all time for Canadian players. When I say these numbers to you, how does that make you feel?
Uh, it doesn't really make me feel any type of way. I feel like I haven't reached my potential in terms of poker. I feel like I've had a lot of setbacks in my career. Uh, a lot to
That
do actually with sports gambling. It really set me back. Um, I obviously I'm grateful. I have for these achievements, but yeah, I feel like I owe it now. I owe it to myself. I feel like I can I have a lot more to offer in this game and a lot more. I feel like I should my achievements are not where they should be. So, but I'm
so
also very hard on myself.
Hey, before we get back to the show, I want to talk about the easiest way to improve as a sports bettor is by using multiple sports books and always getting the best odds. We recommend using an odds comparison tool like BetStamp. BetStamp compares odds across every sports book for games, futures, and player props. Save time and money by checking BetStamp before you bet. Download the app today. If you're looking to sign up for a new sportsbook account, please check out the offers available at betstamp.app/circles off or hit the link in the description. If you sign up through this page, it helps support the show. Now back to the show. I think all the great people are right. It's like you feel accomplished, but you also feel like you haven't reached the peak of what you can do. You talked about sports betting sometimes gets you in trouble. I find there's a lot of overlap. Poker players will just because they're great poker players does not mean they're great sports bettors. Because it's like the same way that I think I'm good at poker, but I'm not. I don't put in the hours or the necessary work to get good at poker. It's the same thing with sports betting. It's not as easy as rolling at 11:30 a.m. Sunday in football and trying to beat the board and throw some money at it. Right there's a lot that goes into the art of it. I also have heard a lot of players that are either really good at chess or backgammon have transferable skills to poker. Do you were you naturally good in backgammon and chess? And I know you said you were good at games and cards, but did you have a lot of overlap in like understanding optimal strategy in games like that?
Yeah, for sure. There was a time where I was playing more backgammon than poker. I would I would my life was wake up at 1, 2 p.m., go to Cafe Fraps there on the Danforth. I would play backgammon till about 6:45 until I had to put my 7 p.m. bets in my parlays. And then from there I would go to a cash game like after. So that was my life for I would say from like 20 to like 25. That was basically my life. Yeah, a lot of backgammon. I logged in a lot of hours in that game. Uh,
You had you had an epic run in the main event a couple of years ago. You ended up finishing 10th place. Was that was your largest payday at this point in life?
yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. Bubbled the final table. Also, biggest. I missed the biggest pay jump in World Series of Poker history, which will never happen again. That kind
What
of
was
pay
the
jump.
pay jump? What was the pay jump? 10th place. What did you get, and what would you have gotten if you made it to the final table of 9 players?
So 10th was 585 US. Ninth was a million, and from ninth to sixth was only a 400K jump. So ninth, eighth was like 1.1, seventh was like 1.25. Like there was like the difference from 10th to ninth was the same difference between ninth to sixth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, you probably missed out on like sponsorship because those guys get final table. You get in front of all the viewers, and you probably get paid a lot of money for sponsorship at that point, right?
Yeah, not that year was a COVID year, so it wasn't, and also that's kind of that's kind of died down. The like that was big, maybe 5 4 years. It might come back. That's that kind of sponsorship you're talking about, but it's not how it used to be.
All right, walk us through a big tournament. Day one, you settle in. What is it like? Is there a nervousness in your stomach? Are you excited? Is there a buzz? There's a lot of people in the room. what does day one look like when you sit down in a major tournament?
Day one, no, I wouldn't say is for day one is more like you know, is more of a grind. Like obviously the main event is different. This may be the one tournament where you have that buzz, but I would say day two and on is you get that buzz because when you start unbagging your chips on day two, you have that like okay, I like. But day one is like because 80% of the time you're gonna bust a tournament. It's just you're just gonna lose your money. So day one is more of like a grind day for I would say. Uh, I would say day two and day two anything day two, day three, day four is you have that like that feeling where it's like there's no better feeling than going deep in a tournament. Put it that way. So as a poker player, so for me, anything day two and on is when you start unbagging your chips is
And you start thinking to yourself, "Oh, I'm gonna win this thing," right? Like you start having this belief, and you're starting to look at the final result coming.
oh yeah. If I make a day two, I feel like I won the tournament for sure. I'm like, okay, first place is this. Okay, I'm gonna do this and this and this for
All
sure.
right. Let me ask you all the dumb questions, but the stuff I'm curious about are do you snack at the table? Like what there's some people who love to eat at the table and some people who are like, no, I don't want to eat until break. What do you do when you're at a table? Are you snacking throughout?
No, I'm definitely not a snacker. I'm more of a black coffee, water. I like to fast when I eat. A lot of smoothies. Um, yeah, definitely not a snacker. I would say I maybe eat once a day when I play, and it tends to be towards like the end of the day. But like the first 5 6 hours, I kind of am on an empty stomach. I feel like it just helps me focus more, makes my brain more alert, and
Football Sunday is similar. A lot of people are asking, "Oh, what are you drinking? What are you eating?" And I'm like, "Nothing. It's 30 cigarettes and coffee until 7 o'clock, until the 4 o'clocks are over. That's the first moment where I can eat and be like, all right, the day's pretty much behind me."
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about how poker has changed, right? I feel like the players have gotten smarter, more math based, optimal decisions. Um, have you noticed the change in poker from when you first started to now? And is it a lot harder to perform nowadays?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of information out on the game now. It's not like it used to be. Anyone who wants to like get good at poker and take it and actually put the time in 3 months could become a pretty solid player in terms of game theory and learning the fundamentals of the game. Obviously, there's a other aspect which I feel you can't be taught. Just having that natural instinct and natural presence on the table and understanding dynamics and stuff. Where that's what I feel my skill is, which I don't think can be taught. I think it just comes with experience and just having a knack for the game. But yeah, the game is tough. Everyone is decent, is good now. Like even like a like a fish is not as big as a fish as it used to be. Like yeah, for sure. Game is not as it once was. So it's a lot harder.
Do you ever play online or are you just live player?
I definitely consider myself a live cash game player. I pretty much yeah, I'm a PLO cash player. That's what I consider myself. I play online here and there. I'll play the odd tournaments online on the Sundays. I say like, 2 3 times a year. But I used to grind the online, but uh yeah, I don't really like sitting in front of a computer indoors as
You
much
like you still like
as
the
much.
feel of chips and cards in your hand and like the tactical part of poker?
Yeah, that's how I grew up. That's just that's just what I like. That's just what I'm used to and what I feel I'm gonna make my money.
What feels better, pulling off a massive bluff or calling light and being right?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Both great feelings, by the way.
I would say it depends more on the opponent I would be against. If I'm playing against a high level opponent, it would just feel better, right? If I'm playing, you know, someone that I don't really respect and I do something like that, I don't feel any source of satisfaction. But when I'm stimulating my brain against a high level player and we're just doing the level warfare and I succeed with one of those bluffs or light call downs, there's a higher satisfaction.
Are you talking about like three levels of thinking with those kind of bluffs where you get into level one, level two, level three thinking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So part of being a good poker player is you need to get into your opponent's head and understand how they think about the game and their level of thinking. So, when you're just constantly like here, like, okay, this person thinks like here, and you're always a step ahead, there's no really like it's just like whatever. But when you're like at a high level against another really, really high level opponent, then it gets fun and it gets tricky and yeah, that's when the,
You
the the
said
the tricks come out.
you said how the opponent I'm playing against thinks. How much of what you're doing is also being self-aware of how you're perceived at the table and playing off of that image?
Oh, it's a lot of it. You really need to be aware of what your opponents think about you. And there's times where that changes. There's times where the cards dictate that image, right? I could sit down at a table, no one knows me, and for 2 hours, the deck hits me in the face, and I'm just playing a bunch of hands, and because the cards allow me to play hands in those spots. And there's times where I just have to fold every hand, and there are people just like, oh, this guy's just a type player or whatever. So, and you always have to have that awareness and remember that what they think about you because there might be a time down the road in that tournament or in another tournament where you have to remember what that person saw you do and play in that moment. So yeah, self-awareness is very, very important and understanding what each person thinks about you.
Which professional poker player that's well known do you think your style most compares with?
Wow. Oh, that's a tough one.
Have you been told you remind people of a certain type of player?
Uh, I've been told I look like some players. Not re In terms of style, but I would say, like, growing up, I definitely I did get, there was a time, me and my buddy were at a club when we were, like, 21, uh, and, it was random. Some kid came up to me and goes, "You really look like Phil Ivey. He's a poker player." And this is a kid who didn't even know I played poker, nothing. It was pretty crazy. It was funny. Uh, yeah, in terms of style, I don't know, tournament, are we talking tournaments, I guess?
Overall,
Overall, uh, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't wanna say like I would say Phil Ivey, yeah,
I
because he's
know.
just very, very, very aggressive. His tournaments, I feel like the way he bets. I'm talking like maybe like 3, 4, 5 years now. Like now it's maybe a little different, but yeah, I would say Phil Ivey for sure.
Yeah,
Like
I
it,
was waiting for you to say it because I think I've told you remind me of Phil Ivey. You're very cerebral. You're aggressive. Um, you
and
intimidate.
I don't really speak on the table. I don't really like
Exactly. You're
get
stoic.
get
It's
into
incredible.
yeah, yeah. I'm just I take down the pot. I don't say anything, or I lose the pot. I don't say anything. Like, in terms of that, for sure.
All right. There's been debates about who the greatest player of all time is. I don't think this person is, but I'd be a fool not to say and acknowledge Phil Hellmuth won his 17th bracelet this past week. Usually the debate comes down to Daniel Negreanu or Phil Ivey. Unless you think I'm completely missing the mark and there's somebody on this list that I'm not thinking of, who do you think's the greatest player of all time?
Well, I said earlier, and I feel the greatest card player of all time is Stu Unger. In terms of natural, let's pick a card game. I'll take Stu Unger over in his time and generation, just um how much better he was than everybody. Uh, Obviously, in terms of accomplishments and like overall, like Phil Ivey in the first me growing up was always my goat. Uh, Nowadays, there's a million good players that people don't even know about that are just that elite and are just playing high stake cash games that no one knows who they are like only like people in the game know them. Listen, guys like Helmuth, Negreanu, like they're obviously goats in terms of like they're always gonna be like the Gretzky's and the but they're not the McDavids.
You think the talent level of poker in general is so much higher now? So whoever's succeeding in today's game is the best you've seen.
Yes, yes. So the players that are the name players, when the poker boom happened, uh, they're just not they're just not as good as the kids these days. They're just not, and that's not they were at the top at the time, but nowadays it's just the game has evolved, and you really need to keep up with the game to keep that elite level. Yeah.
What about a guy like Fedor Holtz who comes out of nowhere and just goes on this 2-year tear and like dominates? I'm not even sure if he's the best player of this generation because I don't follow poker as closely anymore. But when you think of guys like him who are more recently dominating poker now.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of those guys for sure that, came on the scene and had a high level of success very young, and for sure he's still playing like the highest stakes, the big tournaments, comes up for the big tournaments, has his own unique style that of like street poker sort of call it, where he does things that has his own game, and yeah, he's definitely one of those players that I would say is at that elite level, and yeah, he would be up there in the conversation for tournament players.
Last question. Do you ever see a day in your life where you no longer desire to play poker?
Uh, yeah, I feel like I will always play poker. I definitely don't want to play poker as like a main source as income, or have to rely on poker to make money. I think I would eventually want poker, come here for the World Series, play my five tournaments I want to play, have fun with it, or travel in different destinations and just have it as a hobby. That's where eventually I want to be the businessman who's playing with the pros. That's uh that's where eventually I would love to be. Like, but for now, I'm still in the grind.
All right. I appreciate it. Demo, you are there in Vegas. We can see it in the backdrop. When this podcast drops, I'm hoping that you're going to be day 4 into the main event, making a deep run as always. And I don't know if you know this, but whenever I see your name in a tournament and you're going deep, I'm always on your rail. Like I'm always following and reading the updates. And I'll never message you until it's over. And I usually wait a day or two to let the pain of the loss or the exhilaration of going deep. But I always send you a message like, "Hey, great job, man! I was following you because I'm a big fan of yours. Always have been."
I know, man. I appreciate that. I really appreciate your messages, and I know they're genuine, and I know who's cheering for me. So I've I remember us playing. I can remember walking up Gamble there, going to doing our little tournaments. I remember at Laz's house, he used to do some $20 tournaments, and it was me and the older boys. You guys were the older boys, and that was a time in my life I'll never forget, and for sure, definitely had some impact in molding me for the player I am now. So I appreciate you, and yeah, I was happy to do this, man. And, sure,
Perfect. Thank you, Demo.
no problem. Thanks, George.
Hey, that's it for me. Another edition of 90 Degrees is in the books. I want to thank my guest, Demo Kiriopoulos, professional poker player, the sponsors of this show, Pinnacle and BetStamp, and my producer, Jason Cooper. Thanks for listening. Do me a favor before you go, like the content, subscribe, share, and comment. We'll be back next week with another guest on the 90 Degrees podcast, where we give an inside look into the sports betting industry. That's it for me. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time.